Althea grew up in the picturesque town of San Gabriel, a small coastal haven known for its scenic beauty and tranquil life. Her family owned a charming bookstore, and she spent her childhood surrounded by the magic of stories. Marvin, on the other hand, was the son of a fisherman. Though they came from different backgrounds, the two became inseparable friends, often spending their days exploring the beaches and dreaming of the future. One summer evening, as they played by the riverbank, Marvin found a small, heart-shaped pendant in the sand. Without hesitation, he gave it to Althea, promising that it would always remind them of their bond. That moment cemented their friendship, but as the years passed, their feelings deepened into something more profound. However, when Marvin's family faced financial struggles, they decided to move to the city in search of better opportunities. Althea and Marvin's tearful goodbye was filled with promises to stay in touch, but life had other plans. Years passed, and Althea pursued her passion for writing, earning a scholarship to a prestigious university in another town. She buried herself in her studies, using her writing as a way to cope with Marvin's absence. Despite her success, she often found herself thinking about him, wondering if he ever thought of her too. Meanwhile, Marvin worked tirelessly in the city, juggling multiple jobs to support his family. He studied architecture at night, determined to create a better life. Though life in the bustling city was harsh, the thought of Althea and their childhood memories kept him going. One day, Althea returned to San Gabriel for a brief visit. She hoped to find Marvin, but his family no longer lived there. Despite her disappointment, she decided to channel her emotions into her writing, capturing the essence of her childhood in her stories. 10 years later, Althea had become a published author, her stories gaining recognition for their emotional depth. She was invited to a literary festival in the city, an event that marked a turning point in her life. On her way to the venue, she found herself lost in the bustling streets. By sheer coincidence, she bumped into a man who seemed strangely familiar. It was Marvin. Time had changed him. He was no longer the boy she remembered, but a confident and accomplished architect. Their eyes met, and the years between them melted away. They spent hours catching up, recounting their journeys and the challenges they had faced. Marvin told her about his architectural firm, which focused on designing sustainable housing for underprivileged communities. Althea, in turn, shared her stories, many of which were inspired by their childhood in San Gabriel. They realized that despite the distance and time apart, their connection had remained intact. As they reconnected, Marvin invited Althea to see one of his ongoing projects, a community center in a struggling neighborhood. Althea was deeply moved by his dedication to making a difference. In turn, Marvin was inspired by the way Althea's words had touched so many lives. Their friendship quickly reignited, but underlying their interactions was a quiet tension, a question of whether their bond could become something more. Althea found herself falling for Marvin all over again, but she feared that their paths might diverge once more. Marvin, too, hesitated to act on his feelings, unsure if he could offer her the life she deserved. During a heartfelt conversation by the city's riverbank, a setting reminiscent of their childhood, Marvin pulled out a small, familiar pendant. It was the very same one he had given her years ago, a token he had kept close to his heart. As he handed it back to her, he confessed that he had never forgotten her. Overwhelmed with emotion, Althea realized that their connection was more than just a childhood friendship. It was the beginning of a love story that had waited years to unfold. Together, they decided to take a chance on what they had always shared, determined to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Althea and Marvin spent more time together, their bond grew deeper. Marvin often brought Althea to his architectural firm, where she was amazed by the models and blueprints he designed. His projects were more than structures. They were stories of hope and change, much like the narratives Althea wove into her novels. One evening, while walking through the half-finished community center Marvin had designed, Althea began to share her own dreams. She talked about wanting to write a novel that would inspire people to embrace their roots and cherish their relationships. Marvin listened intently, seeing the same passion in her eyes that he remembered from their childhood. As the night deepened, they sat on the steps of the community center, discussing the struggles they had faced and how they had shaped who they were. Marvin confessed that for years, he had doubted his decision to leave San Gabriel, wondering if he had abandoned not just his home but a part of his heart. Althea, in turn, admitted that she had poured her longing for him into her stories, never truly believing they would meet again. Unspoken feelings lingered between them, but neither dared to acknowledge them outright. It was as though they feared breaking the fragile beauty of what they had rediscovered. Their newfound happiness faced its first challenge when Althea's publisher proposed an extended book tour abroad. The opportunity was a dream come true, offering her a chance to gain international recognition. However, it would mean months away from Marvin and the life they were beginning to build together. At the same time, Marvin's architectural firm faced financial difficulties, and a major investor threatened to pull out of the community center project. The pressure mounted on Marvin, who threw himself into work, determined to save his dream. The strain began to show in their relationship. Marvin's late nights at the office and Althea's preparations for her book tour left little time for them to connect. Small misunderstandings grew into larger arguments, and both began to fear that their lives were once again pulling them in different directions. One night, after a particularly heated disagreement, Marvin visited the riverbank where they had reunited. The sight of the flowing water and the pendant in his pocket reminded him of what truly mattered. Determined not to let history repeat itself, he resolved to fight for their relationship. Chapter 7. A Step Toward Unity. Marvin surprised Althea at her book launch, bringing with him a heartfelt letter he had written. In it, he expressed his admiration for her courage and creativity, as well as his determination to support her dreams no matter where they took her. Moved by his words, Althea realized how much Marvin had always been there for her, even when life seemed to conspire against them. She decided to rearrange her book tour schedule, ensuring she could stay close to him while still pursuing her goals. At the same time, Althea began helping Marvin with his community center project. Using her platform as an author, she reached out to her readers and local organizations to raise awareness and funds. Her involvement breathed new life into the project, drawing in additional support and rekindling Marvin's hope. Their combined efforts not only saved the project but also brought them closer together. Working side by side, they discovered a harmony in their partnership that extended beyond their romantic relationship. With the community center nearing completion, Marvin organized a celebration for the workers and volunteers who had contributed to the project. Althea offered to host a storytelling session for the children of the neighborhood, weaving tales of resilience and love that captivated her audience. As the evening wore on, Marvin took Althea to the rooftop of the nearly finished building. The city lights stretched out before them, and for a moment, all the struggles and uncertainties seemed to fade away. Marvin handed her the pendant once again, this time placing it around her neck. "This has always been yours," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "And I hope you'll let me stay by your side, no matter where life takes us." Tears welled in Althea's eyes as she nodded, unable to find the words to express her joy. In that moment, they both knew that their dreams, though different, had found a way to coexist. Together, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, their hearts united by the love that had endured the test of time. The completion of the community center brought newfound stability to Althea and Marvin's lives. With their relationship flourishing, they decided to revisit their hometown of San Gabriel for the first time in years. It was a journey filled with anticipation, nostalgia, and a tinge of unease, as they both wondered how their childhood memories would hold up against the passage of time. Arriving in San Gabriel, the sight of familiar streets, the town square, and their old school stirred a mix of emotions. Marvin took Althea to the treehouse they had built together as kids. Though weathered by time, the structure still stood, a testament to their shared past. Inside the treehouse, they found a box containing mementos from their childhood, letters, sketches, and even a map they had drawn of the town, marking all the places that had meant something to them. As they sifted through the memories, Althea and Marvin reflected on how far they had come. But their trip wasn't all light-hearted nostalgia. Marvin visited his estranged father's grave, grappling with feelings of guilt and unresolved anger. Meanwhile, Althea encountered old friends who questioned why she had left the town behind. These moments reminded them both of the pain they had endured to reach where they were now. While reconnecting with old acquaintances, Althea and Marvin discovered that San Gabriel was facing challenges of its own. The town had become divided over plans to modernize its historic center, with one faction advocating for preservation and another pushing for redevelopment. Marvin, as an architect, was drawn into the debate. The redevelopment plans were backed by a powerful real estate developer, who also happened to be an old rival of Marvin's from school. The developer sought to demolish historical landmarks to make way for luxury apartments and shopping centers, threatening the town's heritage. Althea, on the other hand, found herself inspired by the stories of local residents who wanted to protect the town's history. She began documenting their narratives, intending to use her writing to shed light on the issue. As they became involved in the community struggle, Marvin and Althea found their relationship tested once again. Their differing approaches to the conflict, Marvin's pragmatic architectural vision versus Althea's emotional storytelling, led to arguments about how best to help. Realizing the importance of unity, Marvin and Althea decided to combine their strengths. Marvin proposed a compromise, a redesign of the redevelopment plan that would preserve key historical sites while allowing for modern upgrades. He began drafting blueprints, working late into the night to ensure every detail honored the town's heritage. Althea used her influence as a writer to rally support for Marvin's proposal. She published a heartfelt essay about San Gabriel's history and its importance to her and Marvin, which resonated with readers far beyond the town. The essay went viral, attracting media attention and sparking a broader conversation about the value of preserving cultural heritage. Their efforts culminated in a town hall meeting where Marvin presented his revised plan. Althea stood by his side, sharing stories from residents who supported the compromise. Their passion and dedication won over many skeptics, including some members of the redevelopment faction. After weeks of heated debates and negotiations, the town council voted in favor of Marvin's proposal. The decision was celebrated as a victory for both the community and its heritage, and Marvin was offered the opportunity to lead the project. The experience deepened Althea and Marvin's bond. They realized that their love was strongest when they worked together, supporting each other's dreams and overcoming challenges as a team. Before leaving San Gabriel, Marvin and Althea visited the treehouse one last time. They added a new note to their box of memories, writing about how their journey back to the town had reaffirmed their love and commitment to each other. As they drove away from San Gabriel, Marvin took Althea's hand. "No matter where we go, this place will always be a part of us," he said. "And so will we," Althea replied, her eyes shining with tears of joy. After their triumphant return to San Gabriel, Althea and Marvin resumed their lives with a newfound sense of purpose. Marvin dove into his work on the redevelopment project for San Gabriel, traveling back and forth between their city and the town. Each trip gave him a renewed sense of connection to his roots, while his designs blended tradition with innovation, a balance that was warmly received by the townspeople. Althea, inspired by their shared experience in San Gabriel, began a new writing project focusing on small-town life and the beauty of preserving history. Her essays gained significant traction online, catching the attention of a prominent publisher. Soon, she was offered a book deal to expand her stories into a full-length memoir. Their busy schedules kept them apart more often than they liked, but their love remained a constant source of strength. Marvin frequently sent Althea sketches of his designs with handwritten notes, while she shared snippets of her work with him, seeking his input. Each exchange reminded them that they were partners not only in love, but also in creativity and vision. However, their happiness wasn't without challenges. Marvin faced mounting pressure from the real estate developer he had bested in San Gabriel. The developer, resentful of Marvin's success, began spreading rumors and undermining his work. Meanwhile, Althea struggled with self-doubt as deadlines for her book loomed closer, leaving her questioning whether she could truly capture the essence of her experiences. The strain of their respective challenges began to take a toll on their relationship. One evening, Marvin returned home exhausted after a particularly grueling day dealing with construction delays and pushback from the developer. Althea, stressed by her looming deadlines, sought comfort, but Marvin's preoccupation with his own problems left her feeling neglected. Their first serious argument erupted. Althea accused Marvin of being emotionally distant, while Marvin countered that she didn't understand the pressure he was under. Words were exchanged in the heat of the moment that left both of them hurt. Marvin stormed out, needing time to clear his head, while Althea buried herself in her writing, using her emotions as fuel. As the days passed, both realized they had been unfair to each other. Marvin reached out first, sending Althea a sketch of a quiet bench in San Gabriel with a note that read, "This is where I want us to meet, whenever we feel lost." The gesture melted Althea's heart, and she replied with a draft of a chapter she was working on, describing the bench as a symbol of their unwavering bond. Determined to mend their relationship, Marvin and Althea decided to take a step back from their individual pursuits to focus on each other. They planned a weekend getaway to a secluded countryside inn, far from the pressures of work. During their time away, they reconnected by revisiting their shared dreams and aspirations. They spent hours talking about their past, their present struggles, and their hopes for the future. Marvin confessed how much he missed their simple moments together, while Althea admitted her fears of not being able to do justice to their story in her book. They agreed to support each other more intentionally moving forward. Marvin promised to be more present for Althea, while she committed to trusting him to share her burdens. The weekend reignited their passion and reminded them of the deep love they had for one another. When they returned, Marvin tackled his challenges with renewed vigor. He confronted the real estate developer directly, standing firm in his principles and earning the respect of his colleagues. Meanwhile, Althea found her voice as a writer, pouring her heart into her memoir and sharing her work with Marvin for feedback and encouragement. Months later, both Marvin and Althea reached significant milestones. Marvin successfully completed the San Gabriel project, unveiling a beautifully revitalized town center that preserved its historical charm while introducing modern functionality. The grand opening ceremony was a celebration of community and heritage, and Marvin was hailed as a visionary. Althea's memoir, Whispers of Home, was published to critical acclaim. Her heartfelt storytelling resonated with readers, and the book quickly became a bestseller. During her book tour, Althea often spoke about how Marvin and their experiences in San Gabriel had inspired her, always crediting him as her greatest supporter. Their individual successes only strengthened their bond. Marvin took Althea to San Gabriel for a surprise celebration, where he unveiled a bench dedicated to her in the town square, engraved with the words, "For Althea, who sees beauty in every corner of life." Moved to tears, Althea embraced Marvin, whispering, "You are my greatest story." As they sat on the bench, watching the sun set over the town they had once called home, Marvin and Althea realized that their journey together was more than they had ever dreamed. Despite the challenges, they had grown stronger, transforming each obstacle into a stepping stone for their love and shared purpose. As the months passed, Marvin and Althea faced the realities of their individual journeys. While Marvin's work was progressing at full speed, Althea found herself increasingly overwhelmed by the success of her memoir and the intense expectations that came with it. Invitations for interviews, book signings, and speaking engagements flooded her schedule, leaving her little time for the intimacy she once shared with Marvin. Meanwhile, Marvin's increasing responsibility in the redevelopment project demanded more of his attention. The more he poured himself into his work, the more distant he became from Althea. Their home, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, felt quieter, colder. The tension between them grew, both hesitant to admit the growing gap between their lives, each silently blaming the other for the distance they were feeling. One evening, Althea, unable to bear the silence any longer, confronted Marvin. Her words were sharp, cutting through the fragile veneer of calm that had settled between them. "Why don't you come to me anymore, Marvin? Why does everything have to be about work?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. Marvin, blindsided by the outburst, didn't know how to respond. He had been so consumed by the pressures of the redevelopment project that he hadn't realized how much he had neglected Althea's emotional needs. He paused before replying, his voice tinged with frustration. "I'm doing this for us, for our future," he said. "I'm not sure what you want from me anymore." The words hung in the air between them, a painful reminder of how far they had drifted. The argument ended in silence, both retreating to their separate corners of the house, each lost in their own thoughts. The once solid foundation of their relationship now felt shaky and uncertain. After the argument, Marvin realized that he had taken Althea for granted, assuming that her quiet resilience would carry her through the demands of his work and her newfound success. He knew he had to make a change, but the question was how. The evening after the argument, Marvin stood outside Althea's favorite cafe, contemplating the best way to bridge the gap between them. He couldn't ignore the feeling that he was losing her, that the woman he loved might slip away if he didn't act quickly. Meanwhile, Althea was trying to find clarity on her own. The weight of her book's success was starting to suffocate her, and her need for connection with Marvin only intensified. She poured her feelings into a letter, writing about her fears, her hopes, and her longing for the deep bond they had once shared. She didn't know if Marvin would understand, but she couldn't keep her feelings bottled up any longer. In an uncharacteristic act of vulnerability, Marvin showed up at her door later that evening. His eyes were full of apology, and the air between them was heavy with regret. Without a word, he handed her a small, delicate envelope. "I've been blind to your needs, Althea. I'm sorry for taking you for granted," he said, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. Opening the envelope, Althea found a handwritten note along with a small key. It was a key to a small cottage by the sea, a place where they had once talked about building memories together. Marvin had rented the cottage for the weekend, hoping to rekindle their connection and remind them both of the love that had brought them together in the first place. At the cottage, nestled away from the distractions of the world, Marvin and Althea rediscovered the intimacy they had lost. The rhythmic sound of the waves crashing against the shore seemed to quiet their minds, allowing them to focus on one another. In the warmth of the sun and the cool sea breeze, they opened up about their dreams, their fears, and how they had let their individual pursuits overshadow the relationship that meant so much to both of them. For the first time in weeks, Althea felt truly heard. Marvin expressed his admiration for her strength, her passion, and her ability to capture the beauty of their shared experiences in her writing. He admitted that he had been so consumed by the pressure of his project that he had forgotten the importance of nurturing their connection. "Loving you doesn't mean I should lose myself in my work. It means being present, supporting you, and sharing these moments with you," Marvin said, his voice thick with emotion. Althea smiled through the tears that had threatened to fall. "I just want to feel like we're in this together," she whispered, holding his hand. That weekend became a turning point for them, a reminder of the love they shared and the promise they had made to one another when they first met. They agreed to prioritize each other, carving out time to nurture their bond amidst their busy schedules. Returning from the weekend away, Marvin and Althea felt a renewed sense of purpose in their relationship. Marvin made a conscious effort to balance his work with his personal life, delegating responsibilities when necessary and making time for Althea. He even surprised her by attending one of her book signings, standing proudly by her side as she introduced him as her greatest supporter. Althea, in turn, found ways to involve Marvin in her writing process, seeking his feedback on her work and sharing her experiences with him in more meaningful ways. Their relationship became a partnership in every sense of the word, built on trust, communication, and shared dreams. As the months passed, Marvin and Althea continued to grow both individually and together. Marvin's redevelopment project flourished, with the town of San Gabriel becoming a model for urban renewal, blending old-world charm with modern innovation. Althea's memoir continued to inspire readers, and she began work on a second book, this time focusing on the power of love and connection in the face of adversity. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Marvin turned to Althea and asked, "Where do we go from here?" Althea, smiling softly, squeezed his hand. "We build a future together, a future where we support each other, no matter what comes our way." And in that moment, both of them knew that they had found something rare and precious. A love that would stand the test of time, a love that would carry them through the highs and lows of life, and a love that had been built not on perfection, but on understanding, resilience, and unwavering devotion. Despite their renewed connection, life outside the cottage still presented its challenges. Marvin and Althea were forced to confront the demands of their respective careers, which often seemed to pull them in different directions. Marvin, in particular, found himself increasingly consumed by the redevelopment project, which was nearing its final stages. His attention to detail and dedication to the success of the project caused him to lose sight of the delicate balance they had fought so hard to reclaim. Althea, on the other hand, faced the pressure of her success. Her book had taken off, and the publicity surrounding her memoir was becoming overwhelming. Invitations for interviews, speaking engagements, and media appearances were becoming a regular part of her routine, leaving little time for Marvin. The moments of connection they had shared during their getaway seemed like a distant memory, overshadowed by the constant hustle of their professional lives. As the stress mounted, so did the tension between them. They found themselves slipping back into old habits, Marvin burying himself in his work, and Althea retreating into her writing and public life. There was no blame. Both were simply struggling to keep up with the demands of their dreams. One evening, during dinner, Althea finally broke the silence. "Marvin, I can't help but feel like we're slipping again. I miss us. I miss the way things used to be," she said, her voice trembling with the weight of her emotions. Marvin, looking tired and worn from a long day at the office, reached for her hand across the table. "I feel it too, Althea. I don't want to lose us, but I don't know how to manage everything at once," he admitted, his voice soft, yet full of frustration. For the first time in a while, they allowed themselves to acknowledge the difficulty of their situation. The conversation didn't have an immediate solution, but it was a turning point, an acknowledgement that they were facing challenges that required more than just surface-level fixes. In the weeks that followed, Marvin and Althea decided to take proactive steps to find a healthier balance between their personal and professional lives. Marvin, realizing how much he had neglected Althea's emotional needs, began to consciously set boundaries at work. He started delegating tasks to his team and took time off to spend with Althea. His absence from work initially caused some anxiety, but he quickly realized that the people around him understood his need to take care of his personal life. Althea, too, began making changes. She adjusted her public schedule, cutting back on media appearances and using her downtime to focus on the more personal aspects of her writing and life with Marvin. She also began reaching out to her readers, engaging with them on a more personal level, which reignited her passion for her craft. The feedback she received reminded her of why she wrote in the first place: to connect with others, to share the stories that mattered. Together, Marvin and Althea attended couples therapy, where they learned more about each other's needs and expectations. The process was not easy, but it gave them tools to communicate better and, more importantly, to listen. They found that simply being present in each other's lives, without the distractions of work and fame, was the key to rediscovering their bond. Slowly but surely, their relationship began to feel more grounded. The laughter returned, the stolen glances during quiet moments at home, the intimate walks in the park. All the small gestures that had once defined their connection began to resurface. As the months passed, Marvin and Althea learned to prioritize each other's happiness without losing sight of their individual goals. They celebrated Marvin's success in the redevelopment project as well as Althea's growing career as an author. Their support for one another became the foundation upon which they built the next chapter of their lives. One day, after a particularly successful book launch event, Althea received a call that would change the course of her life forever. A prestigious international literary agency had expressed interest in representing her for a global book deal. The opportunity was a dream come true, and it came at a time when she had learned to balance her personal and professional aspirations. Marvin, despite his own busy schedule, was the first to celebrate her achievement. "You've worked so hard for this, Althea. You deserve it," he said, his eyes gleaming with pride. They celebrated that night, not only for Althea's success, but also for the journey they had been on together. It was a reminder that no matter how much life threw at them, they would always have each other to lean on. However, the excitement of Althea's new opportunities also came with new challenges. The book deal meant more travel, more media appearances, and even less time for Marvin. The thought of being apart again weighed heavily on her, but she also understood that this was part of the path she had chosen. "I can't help but feel like I'll be leaving you behind again," Althea admitted one evening, looking at Marvin with a mixture of excitement and concern. Marvin took her hand, reassuring her. "We'll make it work, Althea. You're not leaving me behind. You're chasing your dreams, and I'll be right here supporting you every step of the way." In the final chapter of their journey together, Marvin and Althea found that love was not just about shared experiences, but about growing individually while remaining connected. They had learned to communicate openly, to create space for each other's dreams, and to give each other the freedom to grow without fear of drifting apart. Althea's international book deal was a tremendous success, and Marvin's redevelopment project had transformed the town into a thriving, vibrant community. Despite the continued demands of their careers, they had found a rhythm that allowed them to nurture their relationship while continuing to pursue their ambitions. On a quiet evening, after returning from one of Althea's book tours, Marvin surprised her with a small, intimate gathering of their closest friends and family. As they sat under the stars, enjoying a simple meal, Marvin raised a glass in celebration of everything they had achieved. To love, to growth, and to never losing sight of what truly matters, Marvin said, his voice full of warmth and sincerity. Althea smiled, tears welling in her eyes as she raised her glass in response. "To us, Marvin. To everything we've built together." The future was uncertain, but in that moment, Althea and Marvin knew that as long as they had each other, they could face whatever came their way. Their love, though tested, had stood strong through the trials of time and distance, and they were ready to continue building their lives together, side by side. The shift in Althea and Marvin's relationship had been nothing short of transformative. After months of juggling their careers and personal lives, they had finally found a way to coexist in harmony. They learned that love didn't just flourish during perfect moments, but also in the hard work of maintaining a connection through difficult times. Now, as Althea prepared for her first international book tour, and Marvin was gearing up for another major milestone in his redevelopment project, they were faced with a new chapter in their lives. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of their shared apartment, overlooking the city lights, Marvin took Althea's hand and squeezed it gently. "Althea," he began, his voice filled with quiet sincerity, "this tour, I know it's important to you, but I also know how hard it is to be away for so long. I'm proud of you, but I'm going to miss you." Althea smiled softly, her heart filled with a mixture of emotions. She had always dreamed of a global audience for her book, but the thought of leaving Marvin for several months was bittersweet. "I'll miss you too, Marvin, but we've come so far together, and I know we can handle this. We've always found a way to make it work." Marvin nodded, though there was a trace of uncertainty in his eyes. "We've grown a lot, haven't we? I never imagined I would be here with you. Sometimes it feels like we're both on different paths, but somehow we still walk them together." Althea leaned her head on his shoulder. "That's the beauty of it, Marvin. We're not holding each other back. We're encouraging each other to reach higher. That's what love should be." They shared a quiet moment, basking in the comfort of each other's presence, before the reality of their separate journeys set in again. The night before Althea's departure, they made a promise to keep their bond strong, no matter the distance. Althea's book tour was everything she had dreamed of: crowded book signings, interviews with major publications, and the adoration of her readers from around the world. But the further she traveled, the more she began to miss Marvin. Despite the excitement of each new city, there was always a void that only his presence could fill. She often found herself texting him in between interviews, sharing the highlights of her day, but it wasn't enough. The absence of his touch, the sound of his voice in person, was beginning to take a toll on her. Marvin, too, struggled with the distance. Though he was proud of Althea's success, he couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness when she wasn't around. The redevelopment project, though exciting and fulfilling, didn't give him the same sense of purpose as his relationship with Althea did. His moments of solitude in the office seemed longer, and his thoughts often wandered to their last conversation, wishing for just one more moment with her. One evening, after Althea had finished a particularly draining interview, she found a message waiting for her from Marvin. It was simple but heartfelt. "I know you're conquering the world right now, but just remember, I'm here, cheering you on, waiting for you to come back home to me." Her eyes misted over as she read the words. She missed him more than she had let herself admit. The thought of returning to his arms kept her going during the toughest days. She quickly typed out a response. "I miss you too. I can't wait to be home again." The distance between them was difficult, but it only made their bond stronger. The realization that they had something worth fighting for, something deeper than their individual aspirations, became more apparent with each passing day. Weeks passed, and the distance between Althea and Marvin continued to weigh on them. As Althea completed the final leg of her book tour, she found herself longing for the peace and quiet of her life with Marvin. Despite the crowds and the constant attention, it was Marvin who filled her heart, the one she truly wanted to share her life with. Back home, Marvin was starting to see the fruits of his labor with the redevelopment project. The town was beginning to take shape, with new businesses opening, the streets becoming more vibrant, and the community growing. But despite the tangible success around him, there was still a part of him that felt incomplete without Althea by his side. He threw himself into the work even more, determined to stay busy, but every quiet moment was filled with thoughts of her. One day, while walking through the newly renovated part of the town, Marvin was struck by a sudden thought. He realized that the town, much like his life, had been transformed in ways he never expected. He had gone from being a man consumed with work to someone who now had a love that balanced his life in a way he could never have imagined. And just like the town, his relationship with Althea had to evolve and change. That night, Marvin called Althea, and they spoke for hours. Their conversations had become a lifeline, a way for them to bridge the gap between their worlds. They talked about their dreams, their future together, and the simple things they both missed. The smell of her favorite perfume, the sound of her laughter, the way her hand fit perfectly in his. As the conversation came to an end, Marvin said, "I don't want to keep waiting for the right time to be together. When you come back, we need to figure out how to make it work, how to create a life where we don't have to keep missing each other." Althea's heart swelled with emotion. "I don't want to keep waiting either, Marvin. I'm ready to figure it out with you. Together." When Althea finally returned home, it was like the missing piece of their lives had been put back into place. Marvin greeted her at the airport with open arms, and as soon as their eyes met, everything else faded away. There were no crowds, no interviews, no distractions, just the two of them, reunited after what had felt like an eternity apart. The following days were filled with quiet moments, simple conversations, and the comfort of being together again. They found that the time apart had strengthened their bond. They knew that their relationship, like everything else in their lives, would require patience, compromise, and constant effort, but it was worth it. Althea and Marvin continued to support each other's dreams, and their love, tested by distance and time, became even stronger. The challenges they had faced had made them more resilient and more certain of the path they were walking together. And as they stood hand in hand, looking out at the life they had built, they knew that they were ready for whatever the future held, together. The days that followed Althea's return to Marvin were a time of reflection and quiet realization. As they settled back into their routine, the familiar comforts of their shared life seemed more precious than ever before. Althea found herself falling into the rhythm of their home, the way Marvin's presence made everything feel right, and the simple joy of sharing moments without the weight of distance between them. But as they spent more time together, Althea began to notice subtle changes in Marvin. He was quieter than usual, his mind often distant, even though he was physically present. She tried not to let it bother her at first, thinking it might just be the aftereffects of their time apart, but it lingered in the back of her mind. Marvin's once bright enthusiasm seemed tempered by something she couldn't quite grasp. One evening, after a particularly long day, Althea asked him, "Marvin, is everything okay? You seem off." I know things are moving fast with the redevelopment project, but if there's something on your mind, I wish you'd talk to me about it." Marvin paused, setting down his coffee cup. His eyes met hers, a mixture of affection and something deeper, something unspoken, in his gaze. He was torn between the weight of his responsibilities and the vulnerability of his heart. Finally, after a moment of silence, he spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about us, Althea, about how far we've come, and how I'm not sure how to balance everything. I want to give you everything I can, but sometimes it feels like there's never enough of me to go around. I'm afraid that if I focus too much on my work, I'll lose you. And if I focus too much on us, I won't be able to achieve everything I've worked for." Althea felt her heart ache at his words. She knew he was speaking from a place of deep love, but she also knew that the fear of losing each other was a burden they had to face together. Reaching across the table, she took his hand in hers, her voice gentle but firm. "Marvin," she said softly, "we're not separate lives. We're a partnership. We face everything together. Our dreams, our fears, our successes. We don't have to choose between each other and our ambitions. We make it work, just like we always have." Marvin looked at her, the tension in his shoulders easing. "I'm afraid, Althea, afraid of letting go of what I've built, of losing myself in someone else. But I don't want to lose you either." Althea's response was simple yet profound. "Then don't lose yourself, but don't lose me either. We'll figure it out, step by step. I believe in us." For the first time in weeks, Marvin felt a weight lift from his chest. Her words weren't just a promise, they were a lifeline. He realized that no matter the challenges ahead, he would always have Althea by his side, and that was enough to guide him through whatever came next. In the weeks that followed, Marvin and Althea made deliberate changes in their lives to ensure they stayed connected while pursuing their dreams. Marvin began to set clearer boundaries with his work, making sure to carve out time for Althea, while Althea continued to find ways to support Marvin's ambitions without losing herself in the process. The balance they sought wasn't easy, but it was becoming more natural with time. They discovered that love didn't require grand gestures every day, but the small, consistent acts of care. Whether it was a quiet evening at home, a surprise lunch brought to work, or the simple act of being present with one another, made all the difference. One evening, after a particularly busy week, they found themselves on the couch, side by side, watching a movie. Althea rested, her head on Marvin's shoulder, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. Marvin wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer. They didn't need to speak. The quiet comfort of being together was enough. "Althea," Marvin whispered, his voice full of emotion, "I know there will always be challenges ahead, but as long as we face them together, I'm not afraid of anything." Althea looked up at him, her heart full. "I feel the same way, Marvin. We've come this far. We'll keep going, no matter what." As they held each other, the future seemed less daunting. The fear of uncertainty, of what might come next, faded in the warmth of their shared bond. Together, they had already weathered so much, and now, with their hearts intertwined, they were ready to face whatever the next chapter of their lives would bring, together. They had built something beautiful, something lasting, and they knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead was theirs to walk side by side, hand in hand. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more delightful stories.